I think that one of the things that's very, very important to realize about genomic information is that unlike some of the other type of information you might say put up onto a computer cloud, this information never is going to go away. I mean, when your children are going to have it on and on. And right now, we don't exactly know how to interpret genomic information, but 50 years from now, I'm sure we will. And what that means is that if this information is kind of uncovered and sent around, all around the world, and people kind of have it, it might seem kind of fun now and interesting, but 50 years from now, it might be kind of a hidden time bomb, that you'll be able to look at that and read all sorts of interesting things into various people's families and descendants. And there's also this interesting issue, too, that since we're all related, at some level, as more and more people's genomes are sequenced and more of this information is unearthed, it kind of becomes statistically possible to tell a lot about a person's genome, even if they're not sequenced. It's kind of like if there's 100 people in a room and 99 have their genome sequenced, you kind of know what that last person's genome is. And so I think there's a lot of interesting sort of technical issues with what's going to be happening in the future in relation to genomic information.
Okay. Can I say one minor point, but the point about the future, it's not just long, far 50 years from now. One of the things that's very interesting for when people are making decisions about what they want to disclose publicly, Jim Watson, who had his genome sequenced and made basically his genome publicly available, as did Craig Venter, the first people who had their genome sequenced. But Watson decided that there were a few sequences, there were a few areas that he didn't want to know his results. For example, he didn't want to know his ApoE4 results. He didn't want to know whether he was going to get Alzheimer's disease or was at increased risk for Alzheimer's disease. And he didn't want that public, and I think he didn't even want to have that information himself. But the thing that's tricky is you put all that other information out there, and as the science keeps developing, there may very well be other associations with dementia and things that he wouldn't want to know or wouldn't want others to know that may become available. So again, things that you think right now are not problematic could turn out to be problematic because it's an area where so much is changing so rapidly.
I actually had two I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just chime in for a second. And these sorts of questions are things that policymakers have thought about. And last year, Congress, I believe last year, passed the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, which forbids employers and insurance companies from discriminating against you based on your genetic makeup. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be concerned about privacy here. That just means there's an actual crime that can be committed, and you as the consumer should take responsibility for mitigating that risk, just as you do for identity theft. I suppose that the difference here and the tricky issue for ethicists, as David said, is that unlike with identity theft, where if your social security number was stolen, as mine was, as well as 160,000 other current and former UC Berkeley students, I'm sure you heard about this data breach last week, you can put a fraud alert on your credit report, okay, but if it gets really bad, you can get a new social security number. That's not true with your genome. You can't file for a new genome, you can't apply for a new family history. This information does stay with you forever. And I think it's very important to be cognizant of that as a consumer, to pay attention to the privacy policies of the companies that you're doing business with. Just out of curiosity, I know a lot of people here use the internet. How many people actively read the privacy policies of the sites that they're visiting?
Only about half a dozen hands have gone up.